All right, episode 45, Run Fast podcast is back. Very quick solo today. Just actually a bit of a random thought. I was listening to another podcast earlier on my bit of a walk in the sunshine here in Sydney, getting a few kilometres into my legs, doing some stairs. And I was thinking about warm-ups and cool-downs. And I think a lot of people do get this wrong or don't appreciate how valuable they are. Even though a lot of people can just get going without, doing much of a warm up, they tend not to actually, place emphasis on it and no, undoubtedly don't perform to their best. Again, as people well know, if you've listened to a few of my episodes, that I have a track history, running track for 20 odd years, predominantly as a masters athlete. I ran track when I was younger a little bit, average track runner, kind of a good masters track athlete, but average open athlete. And the warm-up was imperative. And what we would find a lot of the times when people would actually use their first couple of runs as their warm-up. So even though they would participate in the warm-up, they would still then, 4 or 6 150s as a session. Let's say it's, 6 by 150s off 3 minutes as a 100 through to 400 meter runner. They would complete their warm-up. It would be quite lazy and haphazard, let's say. And then they'd walk up to the start line and, let's just take this first one a bit easier, because we're still warming up. And it's like, well, this is actually part of training now. It's not the warm-up. Why don't you treat the warm-up like the warm-up so your body's fully prepared? And if you need a little bit more time in the warm-up before you start the first run, then, spend a little bit more time in the warm-up. I do appreciate that first run, you are still getting the cobwebs out. And I will still say, even myself, it's like, yeah, you don't kick into it as hard as you could to get your body going. And some people just take longer, neurally to get up to speed, particularly as a sprinter. But I think some people are very lazy in their warm-up and, halfway through the session is when they start to run their better runs. And as a track athlete, we ran very specifically to time. Everybody would carry a watch or somebody would always carry a watch, and we ran very, very set times. And, some of the athletes in the squad, they'd be lagging so far behind, and they weren't. It's not like they should be behind because of their warm-up. They just wouldn't participate in that warm-up aggressively enough and get their body up to temperature and their system firing. I think sprint athletes are probably one of the best examples of a good warm-up in any sport. They spend a long time warming up. Our warm-up was typically probably 20 minutes, a good 20 minutes. And, when I was in Melbourne and with a different running squad, the guys there would actually warm up for an hour. They would stretch so much. And a couple of the boys could actually nearly do the splits. I couldn't believe it. I was a bit younger. I was mid-20s. But the amount of time they spent warming up was just incredible. That wasn't the case when I was running track as a masters athlete. We would typically start with our drills. A lot of sprint athletes go and run a slow lap first. We were never that person. We would start with our drills. We would then do, once you've done 3 sets of normally 3 to 4 different drills, we would then go and do a few mobilization style exercises, leg swings and, French drills. Some of the guys would do some light stretching, but we didn't stretch that much to get primed. And then we'd walk back onto the center part of the field and progressively do some faster run-throughs. Now, those run-throughs would probably start at 40 meters. I would go out maybe to 80 meters, and you'd start to accelerate quite hard and get more heat into your body. And, then you literally have your 4 or 5 minutes cool down. Not technically a cool down, but, between the end of your warm-up and starting your next run. For me, the routine would be exactly what I just explained. Walk back over to my bag, put my track spikes on. Sometimes I might, even if it's a very quick session, we're doing faster stuff, I might do a couple of accelerations on the track with my spikes on to get going. And, then I'd get into the training session. But yeah, it's interesting, to see so many people just jump straight into the exercise. And I'm guilty. If I'm short on time, have a full-time job like everyone else. And I'm kind of training for these high rocks events and more this hybrid sort of style. And I'm running longer at the moment. And sometimes I just, get into the gym and get straight into it. I watched a very good YouTube video the other week, and I think it's called WOD Science. I highly recommend the guy. He doesn't have many followers, but he's a scientist out of, I think, Sweden, somewhere like that. Maybe not Sweden, but anyway, wherever he's from, WOD Science. And he basically was showing a WOD. He's a CrossFitter the other week, and how he uses particular exercises to prime his muscle. And then he went as far as to show doing the same routine with no warm up and then waiting, 45 minutes so his body completely cooled down, then doing it with a warm up and the difference in the time. And he said the feel to actually complete this circuit that he did, how much better he felt doing a proper warm up, and where his heart rate was and his muscle temperature, and just how good he felt was so different. And it's so true. And one of the videos he put out was literally just doing like a mini circuit to prime your muscles for the relevant exercises. If you're going to do wall balls as part of your circuit that day, do some air squats, some faster air squats. If you're going to do some walking lunges with a weight, do some step lunges before you get going. Get some heat into your body and get your body firing. And those specific muscles that you're going to use, prime them as well. I think a great example of people trying to, particularly even some of these longer runs, I've now got to the point where it takes my body a good 2 or 3 kilometers to warm up, and I can't run straight out of the gate, particularly in the morning. So I will walk for about somewhere between 5 and 10 minutes, and then my first 1K is very slow. Like I just literally shuffle along to get more heat in my body and get everything primed and then get going. And if that's on my recovery days, my longer days, I'm not too worried about it. But on my interval days, when I want to be running, a faster pace, for yesterday I did 5 or 6 intervals over 400 meters, of 60-second rest. You want your body primed and ready to go for those, because otherwise the first 2 reps just become a bit of a waste. And it's very evident when you're in the gym and training with weights. And if you train with heavier weights, sometimes your last set, even though you're quite fatigued, you can actually press the most amount of weight because your body's, really come up to temperature. You've got used to feeling that weight on your body and on your arms or on your back if you're squatting or bench pressing, whatever you're doing. So, yeah, I think the warm up is really important. I'm not going to go into it. I don't know the science, the exact science about, the priming and the, the blood into your muscles and what's actually going on. But I think just the way everyone knows, the way it makes you feel. Now, what's more interesting is the cool down. And I was listening to a podcast the other day about the cool down, and is there any science around cooling down? Does it make you recover faster? Does it prevent DOMS, muscle soreness? Does it restore glycogen into your muscles? All these things. Apparently, the greater part of the research says no, that in some situations that it may even either have no effect or have an ill effect. Now, they are saying if you're racing as a track athlete, sometimes we would have multiple runs on the same day. And if you've run an all-out 200 or 400, let's say, you probably there's some benefit in doing some sort of cool down, they're saying. But if you've got 24 hours between your races, the science, and I haven't read the article or the research, it's basically saying that, maybe you don't need to do a cool down at all. Now, I've never been a massive fan of the cool down, probably due to a bit of laziness. But a cool down for a track athlete was finish our session, normally walk over to where your bag is, put your tracksuit on, or, put a jumper on or whatever it may be, take your spikes off, put your track shoes on, walk 3/4 of a lap, walk out the gate, go home. And most of the time, the only reason I would like to walk that lap is to bring my heart rate back down so I'm not sitting in the car and, still gasping. And my body has had a little bit of time to adjust down to a, normal temperature. And particularly after a really hard, fast session that I'd often start to get a bit tight in the hamstring. So before I sat in the car and I tightened up further, I'd like to have a bit of a walk. Yeah, we didn't do much of a cool down. So I think it was just very natural for us. But now there's some research, which is interesting, saying that they're not seeing a huge amount of benefit in the cool down. So yeah, I just thought it was interesting, something I was listening to today about warm-ups and cool downs. I still think the warm-up is imperative, and you see so many people start very slowly because they haven't actually spent the time warming up. You'll see many good athletes, particularly the cyclists and runners, go through a good warm up. One particular person I was listening to on this podcast, they were talking about the Tour de France cyclists. They've just done a 6-hour ride or a 4-hour ride, and then they sit on a bike at 200 watts, for an extended period of time, cooling down. They don't believe that that's actually warranted, 20 minutes for a cool down. They said like probably 5 minutes is all you need to turn your legs over. Is it even clearing lactic acid now? It's definitely not going to stop any muscle soreness. As they rightly suggested on this podcast, is that any muscle soreness or any muscle damage that has been incurred, you're not going to fix that by doing a cool down. It's already done, and that's coming from that eccentric load. Typically with running, every time you're hitting the track, and that eccentric load back onto your legs is creating those microfiber tears, and you're not going to repair that by doing some, amazing cool downs. Interesting to think about. I still like it. And again, I think I more do it for my heart rate. When I go on my longer runs at the moment, I do, particularly if it's in the morning and I'm cold, I walk for, somewhere between probably 5 minutes, 10 might be a push. If I'm really stiff, I will walk for 10. Then I'll lightly jog, and my body just naturally warms up that way. And then when I get back closer on my running route, which I normally run from home, I do normally leave about 400 or 500 meters from the corner from where I live, that I do stop my run there and walk back from there. And that's typically just to bring my heart rate back down, so I'm literally not walking inside and my heart rate's still really high. But yeah. Anyway, just a little bit of a tidbit. I thought I'd get out some interesting things about the warm up and cool down. I think imperative to get your body up to temperature to perform at its best, and take the time to do that, particularly in these high rock style events. And you should be priming the muscles similar to particularly the start of the race. You're going to be running and going straight to a ski erg, so priming those exercises, just getting blood into your arms and heat into your whole body. But the cool down, I don't know. There's a lot to be said about it. The recovery market at the moment is exploding. I don't know. It's probably worth buddy $1 billion or something globally. How much of it is warranted? Who knows? I'm always been of the belief that if you like something and it feels good, even if it's placebo, just do it anyway. If it makes you feel good, just do it. Anyway, that's it. Very short and sweet. I hope you're having a great training week, and bye for now.